So welcome everyone to the WIN seminar of this fall or spring, depending on in which part of the world are you actually. So for today, we have the speaker of today is Paola Tubaro, and she's going to be talking about the pathways in network science, which is this different format that we have in which we actually aim to shed light on the exciting, diverse, and sometimes challenging career path of women. In today's seminar, Paola hopefully is going to reflect a little bit about the path that led her to and through network science. So as a presentation, very brief one, because obviously you have done a lot of stuff, so this is just a brief bio. Paola Tubaro is a research professor at the National Centre for Scientific Research in France, trained as economist and gradually morphed into sociologist. Paola is a member of the Centre for Research in Economics and Statistics in Paris. I'm saying it in English because obviously the original name is in French, so I'm sorry about that. She used social network science to shed new light on the contemporary transformations of markets and organizations, and her current research focuses on the digital platform economy, the global production networks of the artificial intelligence industry, the role of human labor in the development of automation, and digital inequalities. She's also interested in the ethics of data and artificial intelligence. So without further ado, I'm going to just leave you the stage for your presentation, Paola. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francisca. Thanks, Alice, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm really honored to be part of this program. I think it's a very interesting idea to share one's path and reflect together about what could be learned from that. So yeah, let me just start by introducing myself a little bit how I got there, and just tell me if for any reason the slides don't show. But I would say maybe the first aspect that would characterize me would be mobility through geographies and disciplines. I started my studies in Italy. I'm Italian by origin, studying economics in Milan. Then after a short stay in the US, I moved to France for a master, still within economics. Then I liked it and I decided to stay for a PhD, which I did with a joint degree, France, Germany. Then back to France for postdocs, still in economics at the beginning, but then I talked about disciplinary mobility as well, and I moved gradually to sociology in the last part of my postdoc, which overall lasted quite a few years because I got my first permanent job in 2009 after a PhD in 2004, and it was in the UK this time. Where I went through different stages. I started as a lecturer, then senior lecturer, then reader, which are more or less, I mean, it's not totally comparable to the American system, but let's say that reader is more or less the same as an associate professor, and lecturer is the most junior level, more or less. And I stayed there until the end of 2015, when I moved back to France as first an associate research professor, then a full professor in sociology. But until last month, I was in a computer science lab. So my three disciplines are here. And I'm still, I mean, when I was promoted full professor 2 years ago, it was in an interdisciplinary field called something like sociology and technology or something like that, let's say. But yeah. More or less, that's where I am now. And I would characterize, apart from mobility, there's another word that comes to my mind when I think of my pathway, and that's resilience. Maybe I'm inspired by the fact that I'm contributing to a book that is coming out next month on social networks and resilience. It's an edited volume. In which I have a chapter, but resilience was really a part of my experience in my early career, because as I said before, I got my PhD in 2004, my first permanent job in 2009, and I had to go through several short-term contracts in between. That meant I got a lot of rejections on the job market, and I found it at the beginning quite difficult to overcome the disappointment and move on and insist and think, do I really want to do this, or do I want to maybe think that I should do something else? And I will say in a minute that it was actually the discovery of networks precisely in this period and not before that helped me in this journey. And then, of course, there's the issue of managing mobility, which in part was the result of rejections. It was partly because I didn't manage to get a job at the beginning, to get a job in France, that I accepted to move elsewhere, and I ended up in the UK, where, by the way, I was very happy, but it wasn't necessarily the easiest step to take at that moment. And managing mobility also means, being caught between bonding and bridging, I would say, using some old social networks, literature references. Do I want to stay within my community, my topic, my area, or am I open to start new things and to link with others? So there's someone who cannot hear me, but the others can, I assume. So
I can hear you, but I don't know if anybody has another problem.
Yeah.
Well, Alice can hear you too. Maybe it's a
Maybe,
specific problem.
yeah, if it's a specific problem, maybe the easiest is to disconnect and reconnect.
Yeah, the headphones or
old
something. Yeah,
good old trick.
I agree. Well, if anybody else have any problems, let me know through the chat. I'm looking at it. So if you want to continue,
Yeah, sure.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, so I was saying it was in the middle of my postdoc years, a bit complicated years, that I discovered social networks or research on networks. Actually, it was 2006. And I had been for 2 years with a teaching, it was not really a postdoc, it was more a short-term teaching contract in economics still. And I was at the time looking around, attending a lot of training events because I wanted to diversify my skills. And I found this summer school in social networks that was part of a program called the Quantitative Methods in Social Science program by the European Science Foundation. And they had different modules on different quantitative methods. And one of them was networks. And I thought, oh, let's try this. And I enrolled, they accepted me, but I discovered maybe too late that this was the advanced module, because this was a program over 3 years and they had done every year one part. So the first year was like the basics, and then second year intermediate, and that was the third year where we were supposed to do some advanced work. So at the beginning, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, because it was like, getting a textbook and starting reading it from the end, which is not usually the most recommendable thing to do. This summer school turned out was difficult at the beginning. At the end, I thought, oh, these network things, they look interesting, but maybe it's not for me really. Maybe I will never do that in my life. And here I am now. So if you ever feel discouraged, don't be desperate. But that summer school turned out to be maybe the best investment in my time that I did in my whole life. It was in Groningen in the Netherlands, and the two instructors were Tom Snijders. You may have recognized them in the pictures, Tom Snijders and Emmanuel Lazega. So for those who may not know them, Tom Snijders is statistician by training who has always worked throughout his life to develop models for people doing research in social science, and has developed in particular an approach called Siena, which is a simulation method to analyze longitudinal social network data. So when you have repeated observations over time of a network. And Emmanuel Lazega is a sociologist who uses quite advanced network models to support substantive claims in sociology. He's based in Paris. The school was in the Netherlands. And yes, back then, of course, it was 2006, so the state of the software was that of the time. It evolved later on. But what happened was that 2 months after the summer school, my contract had ended, and I needed a job. And I thought, oh, you know, this Professor Lazega, whom I met there, maybe he has ideas. I'm looking for a job, who knows? And I went to talk to him. We were both in Paris, so it was easy. And he said, oh, you attended the Siena Summer School. I just need someone to help me do analysis of my data. And I'm ready to hire you as a postdoc immediately. And I was like, goodness, am I ready to do that? I mean, I felt it so difficult when I was there. But here, I mean, I need a job and there's a job, so I take it. And I spent days and nights reviewing the slides of the course and the materials. But it was very rewarding because I contributed to this paper, to which Tom Snyders was also associated. We did other papers later. We were part of a European project that lasted for a few years. And that was my getting in networks. And since then, I started knowing people in the community in different parts of Europe and the world. I started attending conferences, participating in groups. Since I started, I attended the Sambal conference every year except one, the USN, all of them except one, and the like. So, and I also started teaching social networks. When I was hired in the UK, actually, I got recommendation letters from Emmanuel Lazega and Tom Snyders, and it was thanks to them that I was hired, because the position advertised was precisely on social networks. And so it was really something that I thought that could be for me, and and that's why I got it. And since then, all my initial job market problems disappeared, and I got involved into the community, and I think everything became clear in terms of what my identity as a researcher is, and my identity as a teacher as well. And then after all, everything I was able to build one step after the other in a much clearer way than before, I would say. And in this sense, I really, if I can reflect a second on what this means for me now, I got so much from these two mentors and the people surrounding them that I think that really, so this is I took a little bit of time yesterday to draw my network of co-authors, where you see some dense clicks, which basically correspond to 3 or 4 articles with lots of authors. But if I think about it now, there are lots of people who are network scholars, some of my co-authors, and I learned a lot from them after after my first 2 mentors, that I really think that's a lesson for how I should see scholarly activity now, doing to others, to younger, more junior scholars, what I received back then from these now colleagues who helped me so much and helped me get into the community. And by the way, they are still there's still much to learn, even from the more junior colleagues and the students. It's always a sort of exchange, and I see that as a form of, let's say, again, borrowing network language, a form of indirect reciprocity, where I now help other people as I was helped back then, in a form of generalized exchange, so to speak. So maybe I'd like to say something about the specific network topics on which I've been working throughout my career since I started in this area. So at the beginning, I started, so it was in the mid-2000s, and I started with organizational networks. My first project, the one in which I was involved with Emmanuel Lazega and Tom Snyders and their colleague Lise Mounier, was to analyze data they had collected on the advice network of judges in the Commercial Court of Paris. So the Commercial Court of Paris is a judicial court, as its name says, and it's supposed to judge on issues that concern the economy. So bankruptcies, commercial litigation, things like that. And in this sense, it's part of the regulation and organization of the economy in the country, well, in France in general, and in the Paris area specifically. And looking at the advice network of the judges that are part of it is a way to figure out how informal interactions between members shape and transmit knowledge, affect the formation of norms and shared values that then are reflected in the judicial decisions that they make, and indirectly affect the functioning of markets and more broadly the economy. So studying that advice network and its evolution over time, and how it is related to normative orientations, is a way to get a sense of aspects that can be very important in market regulation, but that would escape other types of analysis. And later on, I collaborated on a project on the networks of collaborations between hospitals, so in the healthcare sector, although still in an organizational perspective, where the collaboration is proxied by patient transfers, taken as indicators of the degree to which hospitals share knowledge, information, and expertise. And again, these networks are ways through which it is possible to see how collaborations, relationships, interactions affect, in this case, patient treatment or performance of hospital organizations. Again, we had data about these networks at multiple points in time, which allowed to model their dynamics. So these were, if you want, perhaps the most common but most advanced, in a sense, data that one could opt for in network studies toward the end of the year 2000. That is data that were pretty small in size. The judges were about 150 per observation. And the hospitals about 100 something per observation as well. So over time you have more, but that's the order of magnitude. With so small networks, but with repeated observations and with lots of attributes, behavioral attributes, characteristics, etc., that allowed for very rich analysis. That was the type of work that was done in, I would say, more the social or organizational network analysis field than network science as we intend it today, but that's nothing like the large networks that we see today. Still quite challenging methodologically as well. Later on, I started a different project with my partner, actually, who had done his PhD on online socialization. And in the early to mid 2000s, that was quite an original topic. And we thought, oh, but I know about networks, you know about how people behave online. Maybe we could put our work together and discuss online social networks, which today seems a totally trivial thing to do. But if you look back, it wasn't like that 10 years ago. And I remember the first samples that I attended, there was basically no paper whatsoever on online networks. So our let's get into that was kind of new. And the excuse, so to speak, we took to do that was to look at so-called pro-ana website users. There had been, throughout the year 2000s, number of press campaigns against websites that apparently were kept, maintained, and used by people with eating disorders. So ANA stands for anorexia, and apparently they were promoting anorexia as a way of life and encouraging each other to adopt unhealthy eating behaviors, and therefore we are considered or accused to be risky for health, knowing that eating disorders concern primarily young people, so all the more dangerous. And we looked at the literature, and there was basically nothing supporting the claim that using these websites is bad for health, because all the literature was, traditional health literature, psychological literature, experiments done in the lab and things like that, but nobody knew anything about online behaviors. And we thought, by looking at the networks that people form online and comparing them with their networks offline, in school, office, neighborhood, whatever, maybe we can get a clearer sense of who they talk to, what they do, and what are the influences. And we did that with methods that were innovative at the time, that is mapping online, connections between websites, blogs, and the like. So that's the picture you see on the left of my slide, but also with a survey where we had sociogram in the shape of a target. And we asked participants to fill it in with their contacts, the people they knew, drawing the ties between them and the groups they formed, so as to get a sense of their broader personal environments, and online and offline as well. So that was something that seemed the picture that you see on the right, which is taken from one of the responses. More recently, I started with organizations and the economy, then I moved on to online networks, and I'm trying to bring the two together, looking at the online socialization of the people who work online. And in particular, I'm studying the digital platform laborers who work from home, in particular, those that do annotations and data preparation for artificial intelligence. The thing is that, this is a form of outsourcing by technology firms toward these providers, but while traditional outsourcing is done through chains of companies, here technology allows task fragmentation, so you can outsource to an individual. And because these people work from home, not only do they get individual orders, but they also in competition with basically anyone else in the world. And so if you are alone, if you have a lot of competitors, where's the collaboration? Where's the socialization about work that people working in more ordinary offices have? What access do these people have to social capital, social resources? How do they manage? What are the effects of this on their performance, productivity, or job satisfaction, perhaps? And so, yeah, that's the topic on which I've been working in the last few years, and it's still ongoing, broadly speaking. There are also a couple of transversal topics, more methodological topics that I've been working on. One is visualization of networks and how it can be used in studies at different stages. At the network data collection stage, to get people use a visual tool to fill in a network question, and then of course presentation of results stage, where you show an audience what the results are. And more recently, I've been working on ethics in social network research and how it is not only complicated in itself, but it also faces new challenges with digitization and big data, and basically the changing context that we have been experiencing in the last few years. One point on which I'd like to spend a couple of minutes is something that has been very important for me in the last few years, and that probably I was really looking for it at the beginning of my career, and I'm very glad to have found, at least to have had some experience of that, and that's impact. Is our research just for ourselves, or is it supposed to have, or can it have an impact on others, on society or the economy or some business or something? And here I take the definition of impact of the UK system, the REF system, which is the research evaluation system that is in use in the UK. And for them, our research is in fact impactful when it leads to some change, to some behavior change, or to some change in policy or in business strategy or in organization of some collective something. That is something, I mean, our research that is just mediatized, that is popular in the media, is not necessarily impactful if it doesn't lead to some change. And the case, we have actually a case that was submitted as evidence in the last research evaluation in the UK. So it's research that I did when I was still there. And research evaluations in the UK are every 7 years. So it was in that period, it fell into that period. And basically, we demonstrated that our research on eating disorder website users was impactful. Why? Well, let me tell you the story. We had actually, I said before, our question was, is it true, as the press claims, that these websites are harmful for users? And actually, the answer that we found by looking at people's networks was no, because these networks have a very important support and socialization function. If you have an eating disorder, I mean, imagine a person who has anorexia. It's someone who doesn't want to eat. If your friends organize a pizza together, you don't go because you don't want to eat pizza, but then you are alone. I mean, these are diseases that are experienced alone very much. And the internet is a place where you can find contacts, peers, people who understand you, who can share your pain and your problems. And we also found it's not just socializing, adding some socialization that is not present in real life, so to speak, but it's also giving support, giving guidance toward recovery, giving indications, but I went to that doctor or that hospital, or if you go through the health insurance, you should do this, and that, and things like that. And so actually, these websites are not just harmful, but actually are a source of support and help for these people. And one day after we found that, the project had lasted between the bulk of the project was between 2010 and 2014, where we got these results. And at the beginning of 2015, one day, I get up in the morning, start getting breakfast, switch on TV, and I hear, the news of the day is that an MP has proposed a new bill proposing fines and prison for people who are authors of eating disorder websites because they're harmful for health. And I thought, goodness, shall we just continue our work and try and publish our papers in the best possible journals? Or should we stop everything and tell these people, tell the legislator that they are making a big mistake? And I thought we should tell them. And so, yeah, I told to all the colleagues, all the people in the team who were involved in the project. We used all our contacts, all the journalists we knew, all the associations, the eating disorder charities we knew, the health professionals we knew, to try and spread the message and get them figure out that, look, you're making a mistake. The evidence says otherwise. And in the end, so it was very long. It took a lot of meetings with in the Senate, with MPs. Well, complicated, but in the end, after more than 6 months, the bill was repealed in Parliament, and the official minutes of the French Parliament say that the reason why it was repealed is that there is evidence that this bill would be wrong based on our research. They cite us expressly. And for me, this is really, I was keen to tell this story because it's not obvious that our research can have an impact, really, but it is possible, actually. It does require effort. It does not come by itself. It requires a real engagement, but it is possible. I mean, network studies can really change things and can change things for the better. The other point, apart from preventing unfavorable legislation, is that through this campaign, we supported eating disorder charities a lot and health professionals a lot, because of course they knew much more about the chemistry and the psychology of eating disorders than us. I mean, they're the health specialists, but they were totally unprepared to manage online relationships, online communications. I mean, traditional therapies sometimes even involved people being totally isolated in hospitals. So when they saw people having smartphones with, WhatsApp or whatever you want, they were kind of lost. How do we manage that now? And we, with our research, we gave them answers. We gave them tools to better manage this aspect that was important for them as well. So really, there's something that we can do as network scholars and in support of others who are doing really important social work and that might not have the tools or the knowledge to manage the chain, to understand and face the challenges that our network society poses. Right, so my time is almost over, so I'd like to just conclude about what I see as the new and open challenges now at this stage of my career. And I think, yes, I mean, there are aspects that concern science, and one of them, I mean, I didn't mention that too much, but one of them is to reconcile different traditions, the social network analysis traditions of small networks with a lot of very rich in attributes, and the complex networks tradition of very large networks, but poorer in attributes and characteristics. Can we bring this together and take the best of both worlds? Can we innovate continuously with our methods? Of course, these are normal challenges, but I think the this seminar is the right place to talk about challenges that also concern us as a community. And one of them for me is to restore the importance of face-to-face networks after the habit that we have taken of moving a lot of our networking activities online with COVID-19. And it's very good to have the opportunity of having seminars like this one. And if we had to meet face-to-face every time, we wouldn't have such a large and open seminar. So this is very important, but we shouldn't lose sight of meetings in the office with co-workers, with students around a coffee or something, because they also have an important function and we shouldn't lose that. And another challenge, which is not new, but is particularly pressing now, is increasing diversity in the community. And yeah, I think the Women in Network Science community is doing a great job in that sense. But there's, of course, more to do, diversity in terms of gender, but also in terms of ethnic and national origin, etc. And something that I think is also quite important is that I see, at least here in France, there's a very large demand for training in social network analysis, or call it network science, whatever you want, that is unmet. There are not enough training opportunities, and lots of people remain excluded of that. And I think this is something we should also think of, imagining ways of getting this material to broader audiences. And I'm thinking in particular of audiences that might not be able to access what is available in English, but would need material or courses or some training offer, whatever, in national languages. I mean, here that would be French, but of course that could be transposed to Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and whatnot. Right. So yeah, I think these are the questions that are, yeah, of which I'm thinking at the moment, not necessarily having it already answered, but the questions that I see as the new challenges ahead. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention, and happy to take part in the discussion if anyone has comments or questions or remarks.
Thank you so much, Paola. I very much enjoyed that. The people in the audience can actually, I don't know, react with applause. You can do many different things if you want. I'm going to stop the recording now, but then we're going to have time for questions and comments